All right, everybody. Thanks for jumping on Observer University session number 3 of 4. We missed last week, but we're still going to keep it a 4-session series. I don't know when the 4th session will be scheduled, but it's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about card plays. We'll review a lot of video on them and talk about how we handle those. So that's something to be looking forward to. But let's go ahead and jump into this. This will be a 75-minute session. And in that session, we will talk about mechanics and game management. So if we go back to our Observer University title page, we talk about rules, mechanics, and game management. Those are the 3 things that make a good official, a good observer, right? And which one's most important? Yes, right? You got to know the rules. You got to have the mechanics down, and you have to be a good game manager. And you remember last week or 2 weeks ago on this call, Mitch had mentioned, when it comes time to schedule those big games, he's looking for the big game managers. It's a big part of what we do on the field to keep things smooth, hopefully keep tempers down as best we can assist with, and ultimately help present a much more presentable product for USA Ultimate. So the first topic, of course, we're going to jump right into mechanics. So mechanics, what is mechanics? Mechanics is the word that is used in officiating for your movement on the field. Where are you standing? What are you looking at? How are you moving down the field? What are your hand signals? Those all fall in the mechanics, that bucket called mechanics. And one of the first things we have to do with mechanics is slow down. We're going to see some video a little later of some people going a little quick. We need to slow down. And when we think we've slowed down enough, we need to slow down even more, right? You would be surprised at when you think you're going at a decent pace, but you're still going too fast. And I don't mean slow down on the field. That doesn't mean that you're supposed to slow down as you're getting into position. No, there's a certain amount of hustle that we have to have out there. But when we are talking with players, when we're going in to make a ruling, when we're getting ready to make a signal, we need to slow down. We're going a little too fast out there. Slow down. Let things develop, let it breathe a little bit, right? One of the places that you'll see where we need to slow down is when we signal that in, right? In the end zone, that's a spot where we come in with those snap hands. They come in real quick. As soon as that player has 1 foot in bounds, bam, he's in, right? We need to slow down. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we roll on here. So in mechanics, first thing is first, we got to look the part. We look the part with a crisp uniform. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you didn't spill ketchup on it at lunchtime. And make sure that's a crisp uniform. Make sure it's a new shirt or a newer shirt. We talked a few weeks ago, I think, about people who proudly wear their peach on the field. We've all seen those uniforms because the orange can sometimes fade into a peach. It should be orange, right? People will know that you've officiated, that you've been an observer for a long time just by your overall presence on the field. You don't need an old shirt to convey that. Crisp uniform, that's the hat. We don't have any sweat stains on the hat. We've got the proper socks on, we've got the proper shoes on, things look clean, shoes aren't super dusty. If we were on a muddy field the game before, well, we've cleaned off those cleats. So it's a new game. The team doesn't need to see that you've already been through war, right? Crisp uniform, crisp signals. These are the hand signals that we were talking about. We've got some new hand signals that are going to be in the observer manual. We'll take a look at those coming up in a little bit. Crisp signals. You'd be surprised. You know how we were talking about how slow down even more, right? Because we don't realize we're going faster than we should. Crisp hand signals are similar. We think we're doing signals one way, but when you see it on video, you're like, wow, that no foul signal was terrible. Or my hand in the air, I'm trying to put my hand straight up to signal readiness, but I've got it at this weird 45-degree angle, right? These are all things that you will recognize when you look at some film. And if you have film. And then, of course, something that you should practice. We'll talk about that coming up. Mechanics, know where and why you're going somewhere, right? There's a phrase that Greg Connolly used way back when I became an observer, and that was, don't saunter on the field. Don't be fidgety on the field. Know where you're going and get there. Know why you're going there. Have a purpose for that movement. One of the places where I see this most common is when we're preparing ourselves for the pull, and we're standing behind that pylon waiting for the pull. And I see people just kind of taking steps left, steps right. It looks like they have ants in their pants, right? We should be stationary in that position. We need to look that part, right? Know where you're going, know why you're there. And if you just have to stand there, just stand there. Next one is body language, our posture, our hands. What are we doing with our hands? How is our posture? Are we bent over? This is all body language. A player can look at you and tell if you are happy to be there or if you'd rather be somewhere else. And on a super hot day, your fourth game of the day, we all know you want to be somewhere else, right? But let's tell the rest of our body that we need to at least look like we're engaged, right? This is where we really have to dig deep and add extra effort, and even be conscious of this, because sometimes we're not conscious of this. How you doing? Fine. Okay, well, somebody tell your face, because you don't look like you're fine. Posture. We need to be standing up straight, look like we're confident. And the hands. Sometimes people have their hands crossed. Sometimes people are standing with their hands on their hips. Sometimes they're standing with their hands behind their back. Some of these positions of your hands look a little lazy, look a little disinterested. So just be aware. What am I doing with my hands? And does this convey and what I doing conveying confidence to the players that I'm officiating? Mechanics, big part of mechanics positioning. Where am I standing on the field? Why am I standing in that spot? And I mentioned hustle earlier. We need to make sure that we move with purpose. That's kind of the new buzz phrase that I was introduced to recently. Move with purpose. We talk about it, and there needs to be some hustle in there as well, right? But anytime we're going somewhere, we're going there for a reason. I shouldn't walk halfway across the field and then go, oops, forgot something, and then turn back around. It looks forgetful, and it looks like was crossing the field without purpose. Make sure that we're wherever we're going, we're moving with purpose. When we're moving, we want to move to get that angle, right? This is a game of angles, and if we are in the perfect position to officiate a play, and then the players move, well, we need to move with them and make sure that we have the proper angle. Sometimes it's possible. Sometimes it's not ideal. We just have to do the best with what we have. And we're going to talk about getting the angle, the peekaboo, as I call it. We'll talk about the peekaboo coming up. Positioning, got to get those lines covered. We have to cover the goal line. We got to cover the back line. We got to cover our sideline, right? As the action takes you to the other side of the field, you're on your sideline, but now you're the trail observer. You're chasing the disc. Now the handler and marker are on the opposite sideline. Well, we are going to advance as far as midfield in this situation, so we can get close. In this position, we can't always hear what the stall count is, right? So that's where we start thinking in our mind, okay, stall 1, 2, and we have to start being conscious of what that stall count could be, because you are only at midfield and that person's far away. But at the same time, when we're at that midfield, got to make sure that if a big huck comes, that we don't get beat back to our sideline to rule on it, because that's an active call from the observers. So we do need to be conscious of that. And, it seems easy enough, but take into consideration the wind. Right? If the wind is blowing towards your sideline, you may not go as far as midfield. You may go shy of midfield. So something to consider as you're making your moves around the field. Anticipate the play. We've all, I think for the most part, every observer I've talked to have played Ultimate. So we are in a unique position to anticipate what is happening on the field. You see and some of them are easy, right? You see receiver darting deep into the end zone and there's not a defender within a mile, you know where that disc is going. So get on your horse and get down there, right? There's other plays that we should be anticipating. Is this a team that over the last couple of points have been using their dumps a lot? Okay, well, let's stay out of their way, right? That's something that we should be able to anticipate and get out of their way. We'll talk about getting out of the way of the dumps a little later on in this call. And don't get beat. Easy to say, especially when we haven't worked any games today. We're sitting in our offices at home. We're watching this video at home. It's easy to, yeah, don't get beat until you're at that fourth game of the day and you misread something, you got distracted, and all of a sudden, bang, somebody's got you beat by, 15, 20 yards. That's never a good look. It happens. Let's minimize that from happening. All right. So let's talk about mechanics. Want to talk about mechanics kind of through the pull, and then we'll talk about being on the field and then how we handle mechanics when we're in the end zone. So on the pull, we want to make sure that we're doing the proper signaling and we're of time and the proper signaling of gender. And we have new hand signals for the gender ratio for a mixed game. And we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. But make sure that we are on top of this, that we're giving the proper signals, that we are doing our best to announce the time. And there are times on the pull, as you will see later when we look at this video, I am a huge proponent of where do you stand on the pull if you're with the pulling team? Off the field, behind the cones. Now, that being said, there are other people who would say, and I would agree with this, that if it's a super windy day and they can't hear you, maybe you get on the field a little bit. There could be a reason that I could support for you being on the field at the time of the pull when you're with the pulling team. But it just looks cleaner if you are behind, in my opinion, if you are behind those pylons at the pull. If it is super windy, I'm not going to wear out my voice in the first game of the day or the second game or even the fourth game because I've got a whole nother day to get to. And there's no need to wear out your voice on these games. That's why we have the hand signals. So if a team can't hear you because of the wind or other circumstances on the field, let's just rely on the hand signals. They know what the hand signals are, especially when we get to those higher level games that show up on ESPN or at the national tournaments. So the signals and generate mechanics. Let's move on. Position behind the players or at the front cone, right? We already kind of talked about being at the front cone, but the mechanics manual says be behind and to the outside of the players on the receiving team. So that one's pretty easy to do. Offside. If you have an offside, come in strong and sell it. And if you have an offside, it needs to be a big offside. We have this interesting language in the observer manual, which says, call all offsides, but be consistent. What does that mean? Well, am I calling? I wouldn't get out a ruler. I wouldn't get out a protractor. Here's my guidance on offsides. If you can make it legal, make it legal. Okay. If that means that you kind of have to adjust your positioning upfield half a yard so it looks like they're onside, then darn it, that's what I'm going to do. Because the players don't want offside. They don't want to nitpick offsides. The only time I see players nitpicking offsides are honestly lower level games. Okay. If you want to put a player standing behind me as I'm observing your game and get in my ear to complain about your offside, I know I'm at a low level game, right? That's not what the professionals in Ultimate do. Now they can do what they want, right? Just sharing my insight on how we handle offsides. Make it legal if you can. Use that talk to if it's marginal, get in there and make sure that you talk to that player before the next point to make a mental note of that number if somebody's getting very close. So, all right, offside, come in strong. You want to sell it hard. All right. What's your movement off the line? So the pole's gone up and I am with the pulling team. What am I doing? I'm standing at the cone. Am I walking up? Am I jogging up? Know what you are going to do in this situation and try to do it on every pull. What I try to do is I try to jog up to the brick mark, and then that's where I settle in. I'm not looking to beat any of the players. I'm just moving with purpose, showing initiative, showing a little bit of hustle, and I'm going to jog to that brick mark and then settle in and let the play take me where I need to go. That's my movement off the line. Field of play coverage. So we talked about the pull. Now we've got the disc in the field of play. When you have 2 or 4 observers, the goal here is to box in the players. You should not have players behind you, right? We should have all of the players within our field of vision. So let's get them boxed in. If I were to let a player behind me, I would err on letting a defender behind me. But offense is where the disc is supposed to be going. So definitely keep all of the offensive players inside of this box. The defensive players, not quite as critical again, because they're just looking to play on defense. I'm trying to watch where the disc is going. If I've got an offensive and a defensive player behind me, obviously going to back up to make sure that I get them back inside of that box as best as possible. And by the way, some of these are ideas. These are theories of officiating, right? You can agree with them, or there's some things that you could disagree, and you may even have a better idea on how to handle some of these things. This is just some of the guidance that myself and other members of the Observer Committee have kind of learned over our many, many years of working this sport. Okay, talked about this earlier. Go as far as halfway across the field to cover the marker if that marker is on the other sideline. But do make sure that whatever the conditions are out there, that you can still get back to your sideline to rule on that. And, talked about wind, right? That's a factor, but also the quality of the lines on a field are a factor. We've all worked with that yellow painted line, right? Where when the sun hits it just right, you cannot see that line. But if you were looking at that line from the other side of the field, it would be as clear as day. It happens. We don't always get these great white solid lines, but boy, I tell you, when you have that great white solid line, that makes officiating on the other side of the field a lot easier, because I then can go confidently to midfield and then know that if I've got to bust back to my sideline, I can cover that sideline without actually being on top of it. Ultimately, we want to be on top of it or within a foot or so that we can sell that call, but the quality of the line will actually give us a little bit more flexibility as we officiate the play. And then, of course, again, cover the lines. That includes your goal line. That includes your back line. In a 2-observer system, this can be tricky. You've got the goal line covered, and now you got to dart to the back of the end zone, and that's a long run sometimes. So make sure you cover the lines. And then don't interfere with the dump. Anybody who's observed has probably had this complaint. You're getting in the way of the dump. And I remember one day talking with a newer observer who was just boggled by this. I'm not getting in their way. Like, well, listen, I know you don't think you're getting in their way, but players don't complain about this just to complain about this. If a player's asking you to stay out of the way or making a comment that you're getting in the way, take that to heart. Don't be offended. Right? Don't take it personal. Even if they're coming at you hot about it, just put that in your memory bank and think, okay, I need to step back a little bit farther. And you may say, but Hank, I can't hear the stall from back here. Yes. What else you got? Right? You don't need to hear the stall. If you can't hear the stall, you can count the stall. So we do have a method in place for handling those situations. And there's a lot of times where we just can't hear the stall. Again, a windy day, right? That's a windy day, a loud stadium. There are reasons why you can't hear the stall and you have to defer to just doing your own count, so that if that came into play, you would be able to rule on it. Of course, it does come tricky when you're doing the counting in your mind, because what if there's the contact call, right? Contact resets it to 0. You have no idea. You're standing there and you're already counting to 18. And well, they've had 2 contact calls on them and they're only at 4. So those things can happen. All right, moving on. End zone coverage. So we've been in the field, we've pulled, we've been in the field of play, and now we're in the end zone. So always cover the goal line when threatened. We're going to look at a video about this a little later on the pull. And this often happens on the pull, and it can be tricky on the pull because what is the most important line when you have the disc being swung around in the end zone? They're trying to bring it out. The goal line is the most important line. So that's where you want to camp out. Keep that in mind, that whenever the goal line is threatened, you want to be on the goal line. You don't want to be a yard off the goal line. I mean, there could be situations where you want to do that, but try to set your default to being on that goal line whenever it's threatened. It can be threatened when you're going in for a score, and it can be threatened when a team has received the pull or received a pass in their own end zone that they're defending, and they're trying to get it out, right? So those are a couple of scenarios that you're going to run into this, and they're very common. But also, what's common is for people not to think about covering that goal line. Now, you have a huck that goes into the end zone, and you know it's going to go past the goal line. Okay, so we don't have to stop at the goal line. We're going to officiate that goal line if it's threatened. But if it's clearly going to, if the reception is going to be clearly in the end zone, okay, well, we're not going to stop at the goal line. We're going to get in the ends. We're going to go a little deeper, get in the end zone, and officiate that play appropriately. Be ready to switch the trail and downfield responsibilities when we're in the end zone, right? If I'm the downfield observer, but all of a sudden the disc is on my sideline going into the end zone from like a yard out of the end zone, well, that's when the observers need to switch, and you need to be conscious of that. And if you do it incorrectly, hopefully you do it incorrectly in the first couple points of the game, so that you can talk to your partner about that and figure out how that's going to work the rest of the game. Get that dialed in. It's not uncommon, even with the most experienced observers, that when you are attacking the end zone, right, and you only have two of you, and you got to do that switch, it's not uncommon for that switch to get missed, but it is something that can be easily fixed. On long hucks, we want to angle in and get stationary as much as possible. So long hucks, you're running, you're seeing the end zone. Let's try to get to that place where it looks like I'm going to have a gap between the two players, where I can look right through those players, get that good angle. And then as much as possible, get stationary. We'll talk more about this a little later on, but you don't read a book while jogging, right? You don't read a book while you're on the treadmill. You don't read a book while you're riding a bike. Why? It's kind of hard to focus on those itty bitty letters. You can apply that to officiating. You can apply that to observing. As much as possible, we want to be stationary when action is imminent, because when our eyes are stationary, we're able to better see the play. When you're running full speed, and that's when the action happens, the accuracy of your understanding of the call is going to be somewhat diminished because your eyes were bouncing up. No, I saw it great. Okay. Well, you think you saw it great, but again, jog with a book. We don't jog and read at the same time, and we're reading plays. So try to get into position, try to get stationary as much as possible. All right. Don't rush the end signal. Mentioned this earlier. It's worth repeating, especially since it's on my slide. Don't rush the end signal. That gets us in trouble. There was a play 2 years ago at, I believe it was Club Nationals, where the end signal was rushed and a goal was awarded to the team incorrectly, because the player who caught the disc then bobbled the disc as they ran out of bounds. So they did not survive ground contact. So there's two lessons that you can learn from that particular play. One, don't rush the end signal. And two, follow the player out of bounds, right? We get so focused on, okay, I'm going to signal in, and I'm going to give them, other people are giving the all clear, and then I'm going to go up, right? Let's not be in a rush for any of that process. See how the play goes, make sure that they survive ground contact, then signal in, and then we can go up for the goal. But if you have a player with the disc run by you, rotate with them. We generally don't put our back to the other observers when we're getting ready to signal goal, but in this situation, you would. Right. So be more focused on officiating the play and making sure we get that right than signaling in and completing the goal signal. And again, we have to do this all with keeping the game moving. right? We can't stand there for 7 seconds figuring out, okay, did they catch it? Okay, now we'll go up for the goal. And you can add a little bit of drama to the game without elongating it too much. Reverse goal line mechanics. What the heck is reverse goal line mechanics? Well, I'm glad you asked. Reverse goal line mechanics are specifically used. Well, reverse goal line is when you have a disc in the wrong end zone and it is coming out. Right. Talked about covering the end zone. Reverse goal line mechanics is when you are on the goal line and they're trying to get the disc out of the end zone, not in the end zone. This is particularly important in the 4 observer system, and this is a good topic to pregame. Because in the 4 observer system, you can put one person on the goal line while having the other person trail the disc. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do a reverse diamond, right? When we get into the red zone, we diamond down. We wouldn't do that coming out with reverse goal line mechanics, but the thought there is that we have to make sure that we have somebody on the goal line. So here's the scenario: 4 observer system. And the disc comes in and it is on my sideline. So I am going to stay deeper in the end zone and officiate deeper in the end zone while my partner on the other side of the field is going to take the goal line, right? And that's a good topic to pregame. And if you get into the game and you realize you didn't talk about it, then at a break, that would be a good time to have that conversation and make sure that you guys are on the same page, so that we get the reverse goal line mechanics figured out so we have the best possible coverage. All right. Be alert for threats. You know, I use this term dead ball officiate. Dead ball officiating is used in all sports with a ball. And that means that when the play is over, we're still watching the players, right? Because that's when weird things can happen. Be alert for your threats. Dead ball officiate until the colors separate. Now, again, but I'm supposed to signal in, and I'm supposed to signal clear, and I'm supposed to signal. Yes, we will get to all of that. But you have to stay with your threats. You got to stay, and you know those points. You know when the kettle's starting to boil over a little bit. You know when you have to stay with those players a little bit longer than you normally would. So be alert for threats, especially after a contentious point, and a very close catch in the end zone. And surprisingly, we have a clip of that coming up a little later on as well. Start the timer quickly, right? We want to get to the next point. We don't want to elongate this game any more than we need to. So what do we do after a goal? We start the timer quickly and then get to the scorecard when appropriate. The first thing we do shouldn't be pull out the scorecard and write down the score. Because that's going to get us in trouble. Because if we're looking at our scorecard, we're not looking at the players. So make sure we get those colors separated before we go into the scorecard. And then don't forget about the scorecard, right? We've all worked those games where we have missed a point somewhere. And then we have to put our noggins together and figure out what the score is. All righty, mechanics. So let's talk about hand signals. Hand signals have to be crisp. Talked about that earlier. We want to make sure that they stay crisp. We can do that through practicing. We can do this by looking at film, right? You would be surprised at how you think you look is not always how you actually look. And film is going to be very helpful in getting that figured out. Don't rush the hand signals. And don't do half hand signals. Again, you'd be surprised at some of the hand signals that you're doing. The video really will help you out on this, and also practice. And one way you could practice at home, well, I don't know if I'm going to be on video for an ultimate tournament. Okay, I know this is going to sound corny. Set up your phone, record yourself, go through your hand signals, and then go back and watch that video at home. Right? How'd you do? Did you like the elevation of your hands when you did the no signal? Did you like the positioning of your hands when you did the foul? How did your offside signal look? There's all these signals. How does your goal signal look? Some people look like they're being, this is a robbery, right? They have the palms straight out. These are good things to know what they look like at home before you take them to the field, because you may need to clean them up before you get to the field. So Just a little pro tip on that area. Don't rush the in signal. Talked about that a little bit already. We'll talk about it more coming up. Don't rush the in signal. Reverse goal line mechanics we touched on already. Be alert for threats, right? Dead ball officiate until the colors separate. And what is happening here is I have copied this slide, and those items were repeats. So if it sounded like I repeated, it's because I did. All right, so I want to talk about some of the new hand signals that are out there. These will eventually be in the observer manual, which is available at USA Ultimate on their website. So the bobble. The bobble is a supplemental signal. When we signal out of bounds to sell the call, we can give the bobble signal. And you would use that before the out of bounds signal, or maybe even after it. But that is going to be a new supplemental signal that we now have in our repertoire. We've mixed up the gender ratio signals. It is no longer what it used to be. For in a mixed game, when you have 4 men, it's hands behind the back. And when you have 4 women, it's arms straight out, fists with the wrists pointing forward, just like that. Some would call that the Iron Cross. So give them the Iron Cross if you've got 4 women on the game. We have now changed our pick mechanic. So instead of using the USA Ultimate signal, we're now adopting the whiff diff signal. And this is actually a good thing, because while I think it looks silly, I've learned to really appreciate it. And this is what the players have already been doing. The elite players who have traveled internationally, when there is a pick on the field, this is the signal that they're going with. And this is a player officiated sport. So it's good to see that USAU has adopted this signal for the players and as well for the observer program. Spirit timeout. We've got the upside down T there. That can be done by a player. It can be done by an observer. And then the no contest, the you get bread, is I'm told it's called. The open palms to both players. So those are the new hand signals that we've got out there. All right, 30 minutes into this call, let's talk a little bit about the 4 observer system, and then we're going to get to some video. So in the 4 observer system, we need to pregame our positioning. We need to pregame our transitions with the crew. On the poll, okay, who's going to be the observer who announces the time? We do know that per the observer manual, one observer announces the time, but you both echo the signals if you're both on the line. You could have a situation where, and with 4 observers, it's actually pretty convenient, where you can run and grab a drink while your other observer's getting the game started or the point started, and if needed, vice versa. And that's particularly helpful, especially with the reduced amount of time that we now have between points. Know the diamond down trigger, right? We diamond down when we hit the attacking brick, and sometimes the brick's not marked very well. So before the game, figure out what that looks like on your field. If you have to pace it out before the game, but know the diamond down trigger. Understand your quadrant and how those zones are going to change with the players, right? The quadrant isn't that you get a 4th of the field and the other person gets a 4th of the field, and and so on and so forth. The quadrant moves based on how the players are compressing and breaking out. So understand your quadrant, know who's in your zone. And when you have players in your zone, you could have players which are 10, 15 feet apart. Those aren't players that I would be keeping an eye on. If that's what's happening in my zone, then I'm going to cheat in and I'm going to help out with somebody else's zone to look for possible threats. Because again, we're looking to officiate threats in this game of Ultimate. We want to see when the players come together, how do they get close together? But when they are far apart, what's the threat? There is no threat in that situation. So in that case, we'd be observing air. We don't want to observe air. We want to know where the threats are and go to those threats, understand how those quadrants are adjusting throughout the game. Sideline coverage. So sideline coverage, when you are the observer who is following the disc, you're obviously going to defer to your downfield partner. That's a conversation you two should have before the game on how this is going to be officiated. And then also, when you are both on the sideline, who's going to make that signal? I've been in a number of games where myself and my partner have both signaled, and fortunately, we've always signaled the same way. But we probably don't. It's probably going to hurt us in the long run if we have both observers on the same sideline signaling at the same time. So think about that as you get into your next game with 4 observers. Should we be deferring to one person to signal, or should we roll the dice and let both people signal? Should it be the observer that's closest to that person? Keep in mind that if you have one person signaling one way and they're really close to the play, say that they signal in and they're 10 feet away from the play, but you're 15 yards from the play and you see that player was clearly out, that's a rare situation where you would want to shut it down and come in and have a talk with that observer, because you may need to, I wouldn't say it's an overrule, but you may want to clarify what that call should be. It doesn't happen a lot, but it could happen. Reverse goal line mechanics, we talked about that on the poll especially. And then be alert for the threats until they separate. All right, let's see here. In the 4 observer system, talked about this earlier. Stay out of the player's way, please. Stay out of the player's way. If they complain, just trust them on that. All right. So how can we improve in our mechanics, right? We talked about it a lot. And what it really comes down to, the best way to improve is the video doesn't lie. If you are fortunate enough to be on a game where it's recorded, try to get your hands on that video. It was once said to me that if you work a game, you've experienced that game. But if you go back and you watch the film of that game, it's like you just worked 4 or 5 games. Your experience level will skyrocket because you've experienced what it was like to be on the field, and then you get to look at the video and see what the reality of that play was. How to improve? Practice signals. Talked about that. Record yourself at home. Look at yourself in the mirror as you're doing it. Figure out what you do well, and then make a mental note of what you need to improve upon. Practice positioning. I know officials who will go to a field and mentally walk through, they will physically walk through the plays that they're playing in their mind. Looks silly, but if that's what gets you to that next level, it's a great resource. It's a great tool to practice. Watch others and work in their attributes. We all have observers that we see that they do something, we go, "Ooh, that was really good," right? I want to work that into my repertoire. Okay, well, then do that. Watch others and work in those attributes. On the flip side, if you see an observer do something that you don't like, okay, work that into your repertoire as well. Make sure that you don't do that. Make a mental note of that. And then, one way that I find probably has been my greatest growth is when I reflect on the things I did well and I reflect on the poor experiences, right? There's things that when you crush a call, right? When you crush positioning, when you crushed a game, right? But we also know when we may have been out of position, and why were we out of position? You need to reflect on that after the game. During the game is not the time to reflect on good and bad calls, right? Because what's the most important play? The next play. Right. If you do something on the field and it's wrong, it comes across wrong, whatever that case may be, bank it for later. And that's when you can reflect on it. But let's not beat ourselves up on the field. We need to stay in the game. We need to stay active and be ready for whatever gets thrown at us next. And a new emphasis for me is do your best to be stationary when the action is imminent. Again, we'll have some video on this coming up here, but think about that. Right? Think about that reading the book analogy that I shared with you earlier. We don't read while we're jogging. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into some video, and we will start with the poll. Let me see if I can get this over. So look, textbook poll right here. The 2 observers right there on the goal line, standing right there behind the pylon. They get a 10 out of 10 every time they do that. We'll go ahead and maximize this screen. Play it one more time. I think that's Wally at the bottom and Mitch at the top. Disclaimer time. As we look at this video, you may see people who are being identified as having a bad position or doing something incorrectly on the field. Our goal here is not to call anybody out, to demean anybody. Our goal, whether it be another observer or actually be a team, right? You may go, "Oh, I know that team," right? Goal here isn't to call anybody out. goal here is to learn from these things. The majority of the video we're watching is from ESPN. These are stellar players. These are stellar observers, right? But we all do weird things from time to time, and so it's helpful to learn from those situations. Here's another one where we've got a couple of observers kind of hanging out on the field. Got an observer at the bottom of the screen getting ready to look at his watch during the pull, which is kind of an awkward time. Like, no, look up. So yeah, get off the field if you can. Let's not be looking down at our watch when the pull is about to happen. I don't know who that is at the bottom. Heck, it might as well be me, as far as I can tell. Reverse goal line mechanics. So here we have a pull, and this is what I was talking about earlier. If I am the observer nearest the disc, I am going to be officiating deeper on the field and being prepared to cover that back end line. Right? Somebody's got to cover it. And what I would like is for this observer at the top of the screen to immediately move to the pylon, because we have to have somebody officiating this goal line. This is where you could have a Callahan, and you don't want to be running to the goal line at the time where the action is imminent, right? What's nice here is we've got this very helpful, let me see here. I've got little tools here. You got this great little line right here, right? It's this nice white line, but this is a weird field because it's a football field for us. And how do we know that's the line that we're used to? Generally, we don't have lines all over the field, so we kind of get numb to the lines that are out there. So just be aware that that could throw you off, which is another reason why getting to the cone is going to be very helpful. You know, something I didn't put in this rundown, but it just came to mind, is as we're officiating a game, know where the goal lines are, know where all the lines are, especially on a field like this. There are so many lines, it could be very easy to get distracted. So that, you know, in that pregame, know your surroundings. So, you know, so that you're not overrunning the goal line. Overrunning the goal line is actually kind of common, believe it or not. So, you know, we let this action play out. Let me go ahead and close out that so I can hit play. And, you know, this person moving back a little bit, but, you know, I would like to get that observer on the goal line. Let's see here. Let's talk about the diamond. So the diamond, how many times have we messed the diamond up? We have messed the diamond up so many times. It's easy to forget. So we've got an observer here. We got an observer here. Okay, so and where are we on the field? So this is the goal line here. So we're going to assume that we've got an observer back there and an observer over here. The foul was called, and yes, we are going into the end zone. So let me go ahead and clear out all these drawings, and then we'll hit play and see how this plays out. Go in, clean it up. Observers on the goal line, and now we're in the diamond position. So that observer is on the chasing observer is now on the sideline, where they kind of hang out for a while, right? Let's think about getting into position in these situations. It can be another thing we can talk about right here, actually. Yeah, when weird things happen in the game, it kind of takes our mind off of what's up next. So we have to be very diligent to go, okay, let's get in position. If you happen to be in one of these situations in a 4-observer system where a lot of observers are in, or we're coming out from a timeout, right? Let's get everybody where they need to be. I would like to point out this observer right here. They should probably be right here in the middle of the field. Why is that? Why would I say that they're? What we usually do when we break down and we diamond down is we run to the back goal line, but we don't run all the way to the goal line. We usually cheat to our sideline because it's the 5th game of the day, and again, we're tired. Right? Talked about that being tired. It'll get you. Why should we be in the middle of the field? We should be in the middle of the field because the ultimate field is 40 yards wide. And this observer, who's on that back end line, is got, let's say 5 yards to his sideline. And so 35 yards to the other sideline. And that is going to present the possibility that you have a player running your way. Now, obviously, there's no action back here. It's not threatening, right? Okay, yeah, we can talk ourselves into why this positioning is okay, which is another topic I could have. We can talk ourselves into why a call was right when we know it was wrong. We're that good at this, right? But let's be honest with ourselves. If you're in the middle of the field and you've divided up and you're now 20 yards away from the pylon, there's less chance that you're going to be blocked by another player. But also it's the right position, right? I wouldn't be a robot and stand right there at the 20-yard mark. Wally's not on this call, but I saw we did a breakdown of I think it was the 2019 Club Nationals game, and I made the comment that you need to be in the middle of the field, and he said, no, you need to be where you can get the best angle. Yeah, 100%, right? So it doesn't mean that you're exactly at the 20-yard mark. Adjust left and right as needed, but let's not be lazy. And when I'm saying lazy, I'm not saying this person was lazy. I'm saying I'm lazy. I don't want to run so far. I don't want to dart to the back of that goal line. So some food for thought on the diamond play. And here's another play that'll come up where we get the disc to the back of the end zone, and observer runs to the back, and they're again shading to their side of the end zone. You have the field split 15-45. And another example at the top of the screen, you got another, and this is one where we're coming out of a timeout or a foul, right? So we had this observer at the top of the screen had time to go over. They just thought they were fine with where they went, but they really should be over here, right? We don't want to split. We don't want to have 10 yards and 30 yards. Let's get a little closer to that center. And again, I know, look, I'm saying this on this call, so it's now memorialized that every time I drop down in the diamond, I have to go from here all the way over to here. And sometimes that means I have to go the long way around to avoid getting in the player's way. Just is what it is to try to get to that next level of being a good observer. And sometimes we get surprised for being an observer. Top of the screen, and boom. Oh, I better go. Right. Hey, not calling anybody out here. We've all been in that situation where we've been surprised. And this is the first point of the game. Great place to be surprised. Great place to get it right moving forward. All right. So we're talking about stopping.
Hank?
Yeah.
There's a question about that last positioning about someone asked if being in the middle would make it more difficult to see picks in a vert stack.
Sure. So this is going to go to, this is more guidance than a hard fixed rule, right? And talked about if you're in the middle, you still need to adjust a little bit left and right. And picks are important because when you're down on this side of the field is now wider than it is longer, right? So you are going to run into pick situations, and you do want to be alert for that, but you can still adjust from this center position. What I'm saying here is let's not always fade to our side of the field, right? Let's not always cheat to our side of the field. Let's be in the middle of the field. But yeah, if you need to move 7 or 8 yards one direction or the other to better see that pick, absolutely go to that positioning. All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Thanks for that question. Yeah, if you have any more questions, please type into the chat, and Linda will break in and we will get those taken care of. So this is a play that I really liked because the observers are running in, and when the action is imminent, they start slowing down. Right? They're not busting. They're not busting too hard. Interesting note about this particular play is the announcers had a little bit of a chat figuring out, should that have been a card or not? It's always fun to hear them discuss that. It's good to see that. It's funny how we talk about it's the player's game, and then everybody wants a card. what do you want? It's a delicate balance, right? So here we go, and what they're talking about is that hand, boom, to a little bit of the forehead, which there was no card on this play, and I think rightfully so. Worst case scenario, it's a talk to, but when you look at this angle, it just looks like he really hits the hat more than he does the head. But anytime we have contact to the head or neck area, our antennas should go up for the potential of a dangerous play. But that is another topic. That was a breakdown. We were just talking about the breakdown. This is a fun play because this includes the peekaboo. What is the peekaboo? The peekaboo is what I think this is Jana right here. Jana's doing the peekaboo. I'm a huge fan of the peekaboo. And that is, whereas normally we would be standing right over here, Jana has moved up and is in line with these two so that she can see straight through these players. Peekaboo. So she's getting the peekaboo. The problem with the peekaboo is that when you're looking at the peekaboo, and especially in the two observer system, and I'm guilty of doing this a lot, I will be standing up here to get the peekaboo. Let's go ahead and clear these out. The problem with that is that while your primary responsibility is the marker thrower situation here, you also do have a field of vision that other players fall into, right? So when you're doing the peekaboo and you're looking at more of a 90-degree angle, you're not going to get a lot of the other extra action that you normally would get. That say you were standing here and then all of a sudden you have this field of vision. So not only do you see the players that are your primary responsibility, but you can also get some secondary action if it's appropriate, and maybe even be a crew saver. Peekaboo's helpful. There's always a place for it. And I saw that video and I thought, oh, I do that all the time. Maybe I should be a little bit more selective on when I do that. A 4-observer system is going to be a lot more forgiving on that than a 2-observer system. So that's something I need to be better at. Breaking down the action. Action's imminent and the observer's still running, right? This is Mr. Blair. And the reason I bring up Mr. Blair's name is because he is a fantastic official. Jeff, you want to talk about a skyrocketing trajectory? We'll just talk about Jeff here for a minute. Jeff's performance on the field and his ability to be a good game manager has just skyrocketed from the first day I met him. Had nothing to do with me. He just has become a really good observer, which is why he's on this ESPN game, and why we can pick on him now. So what we see is imminent action, and the eyes are still bouncing, right? Because we're jogging. Let's read that book stationary. Let's slow down as much as possible. Also, we have a down pylon. Let's leave these pylons alone. Jeff's going to go pick that pylon up, and then that's fine. I mean, let's not nitpick too much, right? But on these pylon movements can cause more problems than they're worth. What I will try to do when there's a pylon issue going on, say a player picks up a pylon and moves it because there's a turnover in the end zone, they got to take it to the cone, right? In that situation, I'll usually say to a player, hey, can you put that cone back when we're out of here? And they'll, yeah, I got it. What's going to happen, and it's happened to all of us, or if it hasn't happened to all of us, I would count you very lucky. I bend over to pick up that cone and put it into its proper space, and that's where I miss something. And that's where I miss something that I'm supposed to be ruling on. So do be aware and conscious of that as you are officiating. I would leave the cones alone. In WIFDIF, they're not allowed to kick the cones out of the way. The cones have to be stay there. And then there is actually a video clip from I want to say it's a men's national championship game where an observer moved the cone and the cone blew over, I think. And so the observer just threw it behind him. And then next thing you know, there was a player who was ruled out of bounds. Like, what are you talking about? The cone's over there. It's been moved, right? So look, if we don't move the cones during live play, if we don't touch the cones, it's going to let us keep our eyes on the game. If a cone's out of position, that's not something we should be adjusting live play. We should be waiting for a stoppage to get that taken care of, or asking somebody on the sideline to go correct the cone. But let's make sure that we're keeping all of our attention on the field. Another action where we're running, plays imminent, and still going to jog. Boom, boom, bam, she's down. How was that a foul? Was it not? I don't know. I was running when that happened. All right, let's talk about goal signals. So we were talking about the in signals, right? This is a great play. Your very own Mitch Dangler with the call. He signals in nice and casually, walks in a little bit. He followed the player out of bounds. You know what? If he would slow down just a little bit more, I'd be happy with that. If I could see his shoulders kind of pivot towards the player as he's watching them go out of bounds, I'd love to see that as well. It just kind of sells the call a little bit more, but expertly handled. Sees it. Player hits the ground, clearly has survived ground contact, and goes in and signals in. It's not a snap in, right? It's nice, casual, brings it in, we're in. right? Matches the, there is always a level of urgency in the game. Our in signal should not match the urgency of the game. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and move on from that one. And talk about the snap signal. Plays in, bam, in, right? The Mitch that just got a prop also gets this one. He signals in before the player survives ground contact, right? So let's be conscious of that, right? Slow down on the in. The player's still sliding. If that disc pops up, we got something else. Game situation. That was the winning goal of this championship game. So yeah, I'd be amped up about it too. But if you can slow down a little bit, think about that. Look, if I could be half the observer that Mitch is, I would count myself lucky. And I think that due to timing, that is, well, look, here's a video clip of me not doing things great, to show that I'm not immune to this. There's me. I'm jogging, I'm watching it, and I'm slowing down and I'm dissecting the play. I slowed down a little early. I think we probably would all agree, right? Let's go ahead and back this up a little bit. I did that breakdown that we talked about where, okay, I can read this play a little bit better if I'm stationary, but is 13 yards away from the play really ideal? I mean, sometimes distance is your friend, but there's nothing to say that I couldn't have gotten 5 or 6 yards closer to this play and then settled in. But we had Wally at the bottom of the screen who did a great job at coming off his sideline, starts peeling into the end zone. When I became an observer, there was a big emphasis on getting really close to the play. When it was in the end zone. And I've since learned that that's not necessarily the best guidance, because you want a good field of vision, and you also want to, do that breakdown that we talked about, just kind of settle in there. And if we're running to get closer, then that's later that we're stopping, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we can stand back a little bit, get a good angle on it, just order your popcorn and enjoy the show, you'll be in a great position to officiate the play. So. All right. So that is where we are with the video. Let's see. How are we on timing? We got about 15 minutes left in this call to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is game management. So let's go ahead and buckle up and get this down. First, we slow down. All right. Talked about this in mechanics. Slow down. It applies to game management probably even more. We need to slow down when somebody's talking to us. Don't be in a hurry to respond to them. Don't be in a hurry to get in somebody's face about something. Not that we would ever get in somebody's face per se, but let's just slow down. Let the game come to you. Don't go to the game. So know your role. Right. And this is, we've talked about on the last 2 calls. It's always good to revisit spirit of the game before every tournament, and heck, before every day, because that really gets my mind in the right place for, okay, this is Ultimate Frisbee, belongs to the players, sportsmanship is at a premium. It's all those great things. So know your role, know your active calls, and know your inactive calls, and how you're there to support the players. Don't over officiate. Right. That's where we get in trouble. And I actually have a video or 2 of me over officiating that we'll share. Don't under officiate. Right. Know when you're supposed to step in. It's when you see a blue or yellow card worthy foul early in a point. How often have we gotten to the end of the point and just said, you know what, it's going to be easier to not issue this card now because it's been such a long point than it would, and the player probably has forgotten. Than it should be. So don't under officiate. If you see something that was card worthy early in the point, even though the point lasts 7 minutes, you still need to get in there with that card. It'd be kind of, I was thinking about this. It'd kind of be nice to have flags or something like, okay, I saw something that deserves to be a card. So we're not going to throw flags, by the way. But what can I do that signals we've got a problem on this play and we're going to take care of it at the next stoppage? So that's that. Don't under officiate. Customer service mindset. I learned this from a flag football official one day. He said, what we do out here, Hank, is a lot of customer service. And wow, talk about mind blowing. Just to put myself in that paradigm shift, that I am there to service the game and provide a service to these players. That has really opened my eyes to what my responsibilities and what my demeanor should be on the field. Game management, communication is so important, but not too much. I've seen observers out there trying to be buddy buddy with the players. I've seen players trying to be a little too buddy buddy with the observers. Flattering, yes, thank you, but I need to get back to work. So communicate, not too much. Don't communicate too little, right? There's always things that we should be communicating with on the field. We're often talking to players, not getting in long discussions with them, but letting them know when you saw something good, letting them know when you see something escalating, like, hey, when your forearm went towards that, it looked like it took off his hat, but just be cautious of that you don't hit the player in the head next time you go for that D, right? It's good to let the players know what you're seeing. Answer questions, not statements. This is huge. You don't need people to agree with you for your call to stand, right? If they ask you a question, you can answer it, but try to get out of the habit of answering statements because that's just something we don't want to engage in. Listen, listen, listen. A captain's talking to you. A coach is complaining to you about something at halftime. Let them get it off their chest. Let them let you know what's going on. Like they're out there talking to you for a reason. They want their team to see. These coaches want their players to see that they're out there advocating for you. Listen to the coaches. Don't shut them down. Now, obviously, if their behavior is beyond the pale, we shut that down and we walk away. But for the other 97% of interactions with players and coaches, listen to them. Hear them out, right? You two don't have to agree on what it is, but I will tell a coach all day long, I hear you loud and clear, coach. Completely understand what you're saying, coach, right? Let them know that you're hearing, that you're listening. Clarity in descriptions and rulings. Clarity is so important. How many times have we gotten in trouble because we've bungled what we were saying to players? Probably more prevalent in being a younger observer than a more experienced observer, because there comes a point where you just have all the answers in your toolbox for the most part, that you've already gone through the trial and error of, oh, don't say this, say that, and that will go a long way. All right, let's see here. And don't have the last word. Ooh, this one hurts me. This one's tough, right? You get in a conversation with a player and they're disagreeing with you and things are getting a little snarky. You could drop the bomb on them with the last word. Don't. You're there to support the players. You're there to support the game. You're there to facilitate play. You're not there to have the last word. And I'm talking to myself on that. That's, I can come up with some zingers from time to time. So it's important that we stay above that. Player interactions, be approachable and stay approachable during the game. Whatever our interactions with the players, they need to be timely. We need to get to them in a timely manner, but we also need those interactions to be brief because they have other things that they want to get to, and there's other things that you should be doing. Preventative officiate. It talked about that earlier, where when you go up to a player and you say, you know what, when you went and you made that D, your forearm got suspiciously close or questionably close to the forehead. Couldn't tell if it was a hit or not, but we want to make sure that doesn't become a foul, right? Yeah, thank you, appreciate that. Sometimes when you go into a preventative officiate, you mention something to a player, like, hey, when on the pole, make sure that your foot is not offside. What are you talking about? My foot wasn't offside. Just talking. Just want to have a conversation with you about it. You got really close. Want to make sure it doesn't become a problem moving on. Just wanted you to be aware of it. If a player won't let something go, have them take it to their captain. Ran into this a number of times where a player just wants to go on and on about a play. And you just, again, this idea about keeping things brief, it applies to the players talking to you as well. If a player won't let something go, say, hey, I've got to move on. If it's a problem, take it to your captain and have them bring it up to me. And that is where we shut down that conversation. Yes, we still have to be approachable. We have to stay approachable. But if a player won't let something go, there does come a time where we have to professionally let them know we're done with this conversation, but I'm happy to talk about it with your captain if you take it to the captain, okay? I'll be over here on my pylon if you need me. If a player won't listen, get the coach or the captain involved. That example there. Okay, so I had it was the Raleigh College Nationals, and I was working one of the pool play games, and there was a player on the sideline that wasn't, and this was where credentials were a big deal. And there was a player on the sideline wearing a jersey that didn't match the team that he was allegedly with. Apparently, it was their B jersey and they were wearing their A jerseys. I don't know these things, but this particular player would not listen to me. I told him he wasn't in the proper jersey. He needed to go over there. He wouldn't listen to me. He kept blowing this whistle at players while they were running down the field, wouldn't listen to me. And his argument was, there's nothing in the rules that says I can't blow a whistle at these players as they run by. And yes, there is something in the rules. It's actually, I believe it's in the spirit of the game section where it talks about when at all costs behavior is not acceptable. And that falls into that bucket. Took it to the coach. And what did the coach do? The coach said, Rodney, I'm trying to win a game. We're down by 2. Give me your whistle. Right. And then the coach took care of it because the coach doesn't want to deal with this. Coach wants to win a game. And so that was a good example of when you get a coach or captain involved, they can clean this up and it's no longer your problem. Talked about this earlier, answer questions, not statements. If you have a negative reaction from a player, this is a place where I found that I got some of the best growth. If you have a negative reaction from a player, bank it for after the game, reflect on that. How could I have said those? How could I have conveyed that same message differently and possibly gotten a little bit more of a positive response? And don't track down players after the game. You know, we talked a couple of weeks ago about after the game, we should be leaving the field together, which we don't always do, right? You may stay and talk to somebody that you know, and that's fine. But in general, we want to leave together. But we shouldn't be hanging out at a field because you want to track down a player to talk about a play that happened during the game. Don't track down players after the game. Players will track you down if they need you. Quite often during a game, we get that question from the player, what would you have ruled on that? And we have to tell them, oh, we'll never know, but you can track me down after the game and I'll have that conversation with you on what that call could have been, because we don't tip our hand when they don't actually ask us for the ruling. And boy, I don't know of a time I've ever had a player actually come to me after a game and ask me to follow up on the conversation that we were having. They usually forget about it and they move on. All right, let's talk about game management and fouls and rulings. All right, so you let the player stop the play and then you echo as necessary. We've got a video if we've got time to get to it, but let the player stop the play and then you echo the play. You echo the stoppage once they've initiated that stoppage. Get in there and listen. If there's a foul, get in there, listen. Also, while you're going in there to listen, make sure that you're communicating with your other observers. I'm looking downfield to see, okay, or I'm looking across at my other partner if it's a 4-observer system. Do you have anything, right? And that observer either is giving me the crossed arms signal or the one hand on top of the head that, yep, I've got something for you. And, after you listen a little bit, run over and have the chat with the observer. Yeah, he fouled him, didn't he? Oh yeah, all day long. And clarify that. And make sure that when you have these conversations with the other observer, that you're being clear and deliberate with what you're talking about. Don't go in there and say, did you see the foul? Yeah, he fouled him. Okay, who's he? Which one are we talking about, right? We need to make sure that, yes, the defender fouled the thrower. Yeah, really? Because I saw the thrower foul the defender. Interesting. And they're talking about a travel. So we got nothing to talk about on a foul. They're just going to, do you have a travel? Yeah, I got a travel. Okay, we're moving on. So many weird things can happen on these interactions. So make sure that we're being very clear with our partners when we're talking about possible rulings. 20 seconds, that's how long we should be allowing these players to talk. 20 seconds or so, maybe more if the topic's fruitful. I think that's the language that fruitful is the word in the observer manual. And then, to move things on, present them with options. All right. Would you like to agree, contest, or go to the observers? All right. And they may go, well, I have a question about the rule. Okay, well then let's move this topic on and we'll talk about the rule. And then we'll present those options again and get things going. Make your conferences with the observers quick, clear hand signals, clear explanations, clear announcements. Let's not leave anything to the imagination here after we have been asked to rule on something. And anticipate the false start. Where does the false start come? The false start comes when you have no foul, right? You signal the the no foul signal, and what happens? Everybody starts running away. Anticipate that false start and have it in your bank how you're going to address that when it happens. Usually, what'll happen is, all right, I'll say something like, um, play will restart with a check, so don't move. Observer ruling, it is not a foul. Whatever reason I want to add on top of that, coming in on one or whatever the heck we're going to do. But anticipate that false start and prevent the false start from happening. When you're 90% right, you can still be 100% wrong, right? You can be 90% right, 100% wrong on your ruling. It happens. If you find out that you're wrong, learn from it. Don't dwell on this during the game. Sometimes you can hear a moan from the crowd or a moan from players. You're like, ooh, I might have got that wrong there. It'll happen. Sometimes you have the video available and you see on the board, they do a replay and you're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't what I thought happened. It'll happen. The great travesty would be if you didn't learn from it, right? So that's where it goes. With all these other things we're talking about game management, when a bad experience happens, play it back in your mind. Same thing with this. Play it back in your mind. What could I have done differently to better officiate that particular play? And if you're sending back multiple times in a game, right, if we don't have that 90% certainty and they go to the observers, then we're probably going to send it back. If you are sending the disc back too many times in the game, you need to reevaluate your approach to observing and figure out how you can clean it up. Sideline management. Sideline management is something that we should pregame with the crew so that both sides are consistent. There's been games where you have talked to your sideline, and what have they said? They said, well, they're not doing it on the other side. You're like, darn it, they probably aren't. How do you answer that? You answer that, well, I'm not working that side. Right. And if you do have inconsistent sidelines, find a stoppage of play and have that conversation. You want to get these problems early. You don't want the cards or the technicals to come out late in the game when the action's been happening the entire game, right? Get these problems early. Make it the team's issue to manage and not yours. We can harp on the sidelines all day, or we can go to a captain and a coach to say, this is becoming a problem. Can you get somebody to manage this for your team? Because I don't want you to get a technical, because you guys are encroaching on the field too much. Make sure that we are communicating professionally, give direction or information when appropriate. You can do the everybody back up, right? And that's a direction. Or you could give information. Hey, sidelines, I'm coming your way. And they'll usually go, oh, I should back up then, right? Just a helpful tip, because, we get tired of telling people what to do. Sometimes we can provide them with the information and they will do well with that information. Appreciate the enthusiasm of the sideline on goals and long hucks. You're running, big huck goes downfield and you're running down the sideline. And what does the sideline do? 10 players step on the field to see what's going on, right? Appreciate where they're coming from. We don't need to nitpick this. If you can step out onto the field a little bit to get it, then great. As I'm running down the field, I may, communicate to the players, get off the field, and usually that will track. But just to appreciate where they're coming from on this, whether it be a goal or a long huck. And when I say goals, players rushing the field early. Let's not, again, nitpick this. We do have to control the game. We do have to control this so that it doesn't become an elongated stoppage. And we don't want players to run to the field. Everybody thinks it's a goal, and now we've got to clear the field because there was a foul on the throw or a travel on the throw. So in all of this, the sidelines, be a resource. Don't be a burden to these players. And you can be a burden by involving the captains and the coaches to get that taken care of. And then we're going to wrap up here with spirit timeouts. And we'll just zip through this one real quick. Be aware of your timing of a spirit timeout. And why would we do a spirit timeout? We would do a spirit timeout because both teams are just really pushing the rules. They're being very ticky-tack. They're calling lots of unnecessary calls. They are trying to game the system and not play the game. Right. So that's an opportunity where we should call a spirit timeout. When you call the spirit of time, when you call a timeout, make sure that the timing isn't disadvantaging a team. Generally, we're going to do that at the next, not at the next stoppage of a point, but we're going to do it in between points. That's the ideal time to take a spirit timeout. I would never call a spirit timeout during a point, or even if a team called a timeout, I probably wouldn't elongate that timeout. Maybe I would. I guess maybe it's a game time situation. But here's what you do on a spirit timeout: instruct the teams to huddle separately. I've done spirit timeouts where they haven't done this, and I learned from that. The spirit timeout wasn't very successful when I didn't have them huddle. Make them huddle separately. They can talk about their game plans and stuff, and then meet the spirit captains at midfield, have that conversation with them. Ask the spirit captains to discuss their opinions of the game, get their thoughts on how things have been going, and the way they think the game is going and the way the reality is falling, maybe two separately different things. In one of my spirit timeouts, I remember going, "How's the game going?" And they said, "Pretty good, pretty good." Okay. I completely disagree with that, gentlemen. This game is not going well. We have multiple stoppages in every point, and we've had multiple cards, and players are being very ticky-tack. Would you agree with that? Yeah, I'd agree with that. Right. So, but let's engage the spirit captains. The spirit timeout isn't a time for a tongue lashing. It's time for a conversation. What can the spirit captains do to get the teams, back on course? Keep your concerns and your guidance clear. Don't leave anything to the imagination. One of the things could be teams. If we continue to see these ticky-tack calls, we'll start carding the players immediately. We're not going to allow that to continue, and they'll take that to their huddle. And now the whole team is on notice that the cards are going to come out, and we don't want that, right? If we can get it with a spirit timeout. If it escalates to that, we have to do it with a spirit timeout. Hopefully that conversation with the spirit captain will take care of that. And one observer should lead. Don't talk over each other. Know which observer is going. And then towards the end of the spirit timeout, right, make sure that the observer confers with the other observer. Hey, if Mitch is running the spirit timeout, he should say, "Hank, do you have anything you need to add?" "No, Mitch, you covered it all." Or, let's make sure the sidelines are clear. Can we get a captain to deal with the with the sideline, please? So that is that. I'm going to break the rules tonight. As I drink some water, we are going to spend 4 minutes talking about plays. Just 4 minutes, and then I'm going to cut you free. If you got to go, this video will be online that you can watch the last few minutes later. And when we're done with the video and we conclude the call, we'll stop the recording, open it up for Q&A, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But let's see here. I wanted to go to this play. Let's see what we got. Oh, that's not what I wanted at all. Let me close this. Yes. This is a game that aged me a few years. This is the 2018 Club Open semifinal. And boy, we so happy to be working with the crew I had on this game. It was myself, Jana, Wally, and Frito. And it was the right crew at the right time. Look at that foul. I just clicked anywhere. I randomly clicked there and it says foul. What I'm trying to do is I just stopped the share. Let me get that back. Sorry about that. Boop. Share. All right, now it's back. We'll edit that in post. And we'll get the bar out of the way. What we're looking for is the 35-minute mark, which we passed. And what we're going to see here is there's going to be a stall called right here. And this is bad game management by me. I go in, I find out what's going on with the stall. Okay, or no, there's a foul called or some sort of stoppage. Coming in on 3, and then the player is going to get stalled. And what do we do when there's a stall? We, play stops. We don't stop the play. The players stop the play. And if the players want to continue playing, they can. I put my hand in the air and I immediately say, stop play, stop play. And, now the players are running downfield. And because of all of it, you see the player signaling stop, 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 right? The defender who is defending the thrower. Let me see if I can get back to that. I'm going too far. I could easily say, no, it was the player that stopped play. No, I stopped play on this. And it took 40 seconds to restart the play. That's just bad observing, right? We need to be a good game manager. And as a good game manager, Let the players do what the players want to do. Now, if the players themselves start saying, whoa, whoa, what's going on? What's going on? Well, that's when you echo the stoppage, right? Because the players have then started initiating the stoppage. Just because a player looks confused, it doesn't mean that we initiate that we echo the stoppage. We want the players to actually stop the play before we start echoing that stoppage. So mark one up for me. Let's see here. I want to go to 29:15. I'm talking about I went too far. Talking about game management and weird things that can happen. So we've got, let me pause here. What we're going to look at on this play are, I believe, these two players or these two players. There's a lot of jostling going on this play, and it's going to turn into a foul. Yeah, okay, yeah, you can clearly make it out. A lot of action. In fact, let me see if I can take that back 10 seconds. Let's see what those two players are doing. So a little bit of action early, cuts to the left, cuts on the inside, comes back out, gets hooked. Then that's where we draw the foul call. First of all, my antennas are coming up because that right there, that contact that player makes with the opponent should not be accepted. That we should be running in there to shut it down. Now Frito's there and he's got it under control. But we should, if you ever see that happening, the antennas go up. We got to get in on that. He's in there. They're having a spirited conversation. Observers attempting to de-escalate the situation, and he's ultimately going to rule a foul. All right, game management. Why are we talking about this? Well, let's watch. We got a goal and a spike. Don't see that every day, do you? And now you've got opponents on top of opponents. Remember, we talked about separating colors, right? You don't go to your scorecard. start the clock, but don't go to your scorecard. This is where we have to earn our money. This is where we have to be aware of what's going on. You got a lot of chippy talk going on here. You got finger pointing. It's not good. Observers are coming in. We're watching this now. If fists start flying, I'm not getting in the middle of it. I'm just standing back and taking numbers. Let the players do that. But I don't want to get injured in that particular situation. But game management, right? The pot is starting to boil over. So let's go ahead and make our presence known in those situations and try to de-escalate as best as we can. And with that will conclude tonight's Observer University. Thank you all for joining here. We'll go ahead and there'll be one more Observer University coming up. We'll go ahead and stop the recording now and open it up for any Q&A. And with that, let me see here. Did I stop the recording?